Right.
And y'all had the audacity to sit over here and put out another buck breaking letter, sitting over there talking about how once again y'all gonna bend over to the Democrat Party without getting anything in return, except more than likely, and I'll call it out like this: we haven't seen anything as a people. So the only way or the only motivation I can see why y'all would be doing this is to get something for yourselves.
You're listening to the Bean Pie Chronicles podcast. So kick off your leather socks and unpin your head wrap. The Bean Pie Chronicles is now on the air.
I'm doing too. We're back in the building.
Again,
Inshallah. Bean Pie Chronicles. Reboot the reboot. We got the brother Fifth Element in the building tonight. Inshallah.
Alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How's everything going, my brother?
Man, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. It's a crazy world we live in, right?
Yeah. So, breaking news, I guess. Aside from what's going on with the election, that's what
hmm
we're here to talk about. We're here to chop it up. But I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news right now. I guess breaking news is that Israel has launched this attack on Iran as we speak,
That's
and
right. That's
so
right. Another October surprise.
October
You know what I
surprise.
mean?
You
Yeah.
know, so we wanted to talk about the situation right now. We're very close to election day, 2024.
Right.
You
Go
know,
vote. Everybody go vote too, man. Make
that's
sure you
right.
do that. That's it.
That's right. So you and I, we talk politics all the time,
Right.
um, particularly in support of a lot of different controversial positions. You know, we both, I would say, would consider ourselves African American Muslim conservatives, um, and I think we could go even further and say that we identify with the MAGA movement. Um,
Right. Although I will never wear the red hat. I'll never
yeah,
wear the
yeah,
red
yeah.
hat.
You know, it's
But
crazy. Somebody asked me about that yesterday. I said I'm not that deep into it. You know what I'm
I ain't
saying?
that there. He got my vote though. He got my
Right,
vote.
right,
I want to see low gas prices. But I
right.
ain't wearing
Among other
no MAGA.
things. As this election has proceeded, one of the most interesting developments has been with the Muslim community um, playing a significant role in, especially in Michigan, swing
Right.
state, the Arab Muslims, in particular, and I
Right.
believe even um, it's not exclusively the Arab Muslims, but the Arab Muslim community, I believe, initiated the abandoned Biden movement, and then that
Right.
also has translated into the sort of abandoned Harris movement, and
Right.
that has been had a powerful impact on the geopolitics. Um, and now, and also what has happened is interesting as a result of the Muslim community, by and large, being asked to abandon the Democratic Party. There has been an interesting reaction to that, most notably with the African American Muslim community.
Right.
Uh,
Unfortunately, my community more than any other one. I'm almost disgusted at them right now with how Imam WD's community seems to be cowering, egging, uh, buck dancing. I don't know what's the right words to use, but they are very much so in beta male phase when it comes to the understanding of politics, how to come to the table and demand even your share of the pie, as opposed to just, for lack of a better word, just bending over and saying, "Hey, listen, we are so afraid of, one guy. We don't even want to go to the table and negotiate with him to see whether or not he might actually have a bigger pie than what this other side is giving us, especially being that they tried, I don't know if you're familiar with this, they put out a letter, right? These imams, right? They put out a letter back in 2020, and I roasted them for it then, because they just immediately, that same tactic of we will give you the whole vote. First off, they don't speak for me, so I don't even know how they attempted to even think they was promising my vote. They could promise their vote, their individual vote. They don't speak for me. But at the same time, they were sitting over there saying, hey, listen, without you giving us anything, without any concessions, we will just gladly give our entire selves over. That shows a complete lack of understanding of how to wield your leadership. And that's why I had said it back then, they should have been removed from their positions. They had already violated trust, even with not only the elections, but then also with telling us to go get vaccinated and all the rest, and then circle all the way back around again. They have the audacity to go back again. I almost want to call out some of these dudes by name, because look at me in my face. Y'all done had conversations with me before. Y'all know who I am.
Right.
And y'all had the audacity to sit over here and put out another buck-breaking letter, sitting over there talking about how, once again, y'all gonna bend over to the Democrat Party without getting anything in return, except, more than likely, and I'll call it out like this, we haven't seen anything as a people. So the only way, or the only motivation I can see why y'all would be doing this is to get something for yourselves.
Now,
so yeah, I got an issue with them.
Now, we've had this conversation over years. My assessment of the Imam WD community and the message itself, as it departs, as it set itself out, as it departed from the message of the nation. Regardless, outside of the Akida issue, as far as the messenger and Orthodox Islam, outside of that, I'm talking about what, in my opinion, would have been the fundamental difference. To me, the fundamental difference, a lot of Muslims, African American Muslims, that are maybe from within the community and from without the community, like to point out the difference between the nation and Orthodox Islam as being fundamentally about the statement of the nation that Allah came in the form of Master Farad, right? So it's the shirk for me. So that's everybody's issue, and I'm saying that yes, that is the most important issue, and at one point, and I wanted to put that on record, because at one point I was so adamant about that not being the first and most significant matter, because I saw the second issue, I saw another issue as being the primary issue. Then that would be the nation, the idea and the concept of a nation outside of a nation, and what that really meant. I thought that idea was such a transformative idea, and that even though the Imam WD community made the correction, even though some Orthodox Muslim community still don't even give them the acknowledgement for that, he made that correction. But what he, in my opinion, when he threw out the baby with the bathwater, was once he decided to abandon the nation concept for the community, or even the tribe concept, but the community of Imam WD as opposed to the Nation of Islam, the idea of the community being Muslims among the other communities within the communities of America. And so that left the black Muslim that followed this transformation to, I would say, assimilate, whereas the nation was separate because a separatist movement, because they identified themselves as a separate nation. When Imam WD left that concept and adopted the community concept and focused on community life as opposed to the establishment of a nation mindset, that left the community, or I've sensed that the community was even encouraged to go and assimilate into the norms and the standards of everyday America. And so when you say that there was no negotiation, I kind of would have to push back on that, because as normal Americans, you know, it seems to me that the community has decided, like your typical African American community, your typical African American church, your mega church, your neighborhood church, you know, 90% high percentage of African Americans vote Democrat for, you know, for the same reasons, you know, Voters' Rights Act and Civil Rights Act and the Republicans are racist. Those same mantras that are prevalent in African American middle class, upper middle class society is that's the normative position. So I don't think that it's a stretch that the Imam WD community leadership would just fall in line with every other, you know, their attempt or their objective is to be just another community within the community, the body politics.
Well, and I'm gonna say this, and I know it might be a little controversial. I you know, you bring me up on here, I'm gonna ruffle some feathers up every time I come on here, right?
All right.
But it's not just for the sake of quote unquote stirring up fitna, because that's not my thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I will say that I definitely feel that, you know, even as we go into this whole little political thing, you know, I spoke about this concept of every religious order on some level had a deep state attached to it, and that all of them needed to undergo a swamp drain.
What's a deep state? What's a deep state? Just to be clear.
Okay, well, for as I would define it, I would call the deep state the positions of power that the people don't elect, that a lot of time they're not even mindful of. Like, they might not be aware of who the head of the International Monetary Fund is, or who's the president of the World Bank, or something along those lines. They might not have been aware of who Fauci was before the pandemic. But meanwhile, that dude was in there for 40 years. He oversaw 8, 9, 10 presidents.
Right.
So, like, the people, the people who actually play the kingmakers behind the scenes,
the permanent administrative state, the people that hang around.
Permanent administrative power structure.
Great. All right.
And so, you know, without mentioning no names, nothing like that right now, although they know who they are. You know, you got certain communities, as an example, where it'd be like, you know, you got a elderly imam or whatever like that, and they might step aside, but they don't ever quote unquote relinquish power. They actually have a say in who gets put in after that. Wink,
right.
Wink. Right? And then they go around and turn around and then go ahead and overly go ahead and promote Kamala. And then, you know, the underlings that they put in place, who say, you know, they weren't going to give any kind of endorsement whatsoever when they person that put him in power or put him in a little position,
right,
goes ahead and endorses Kamala in the papers. Best believe they fall right in line and put their name up on that letter too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's like what I definitely believe has happened, and just to kind of put a bow on what you had said, I don't believe that it was an assimilation process. I believe that the process, the strategy changed, so as to say that in order for Al-Islam to be established here in America the way that it was supposed to, America actually provided that construct for you to become a nation within a nation without you needing to separate. The Jews do it all the time with their synagogues. They do it all the time. Look at Crown Heights as an example. You know what I'm saying? There are ways in which you can establish your thing within the Lord, and then have it be where they don't even. You got your own ambulance,
Right.
huh? Right? You got your own police little force up in there that the NYPD and the FDNY ambulances come and coordinate with, right? Because you don't even want them touching your people.
So you mean like the Mormons or the Amish or the
Amish or any of them other type of situations,
right?
So, but also at the same time, which I believe always fell in line with the whole concept of the prophet, peace be upon him, the businessman, is be a contributing member to society. And I always say this: the thing that messed us up is what I see manifested in that ridiculous letter that all of those imams signed. And some of them broke my heart too, because y'all know who y'all are. Some of y'all actually even gave my moms they shahada back in California, and y'all even went and put y'all names on the list.
So let's be clear. There's a list that was circulated not too long ago. That was a letter from. It says the Muslim imams and leaders to the community.
Ain't my leaders.
Now,
ain't my imams.
In the letter, the letter opens up with a show. I wouldn't necessarily show of solidarity, but a show of empathy for the people in Palestine. Say, listen, this is how the letter opens up with, going back to, again, the Muslims have decided to abandon Kamala Harris and Joe Biden administration because of their complicity in the support for the Israeli genocide on the Palestinian people. And
never mind, no black issues.
It's not a black issue. Now, okay. So fine. So I mean, and so a lot of the Muslims are foreign, have foreign origin. So even though they may be Americans, they still, are connected to their ancestral lands. And
the Arab leaders got a right to do that. I'm talking
right.
about our leaders who's
okay.
on that thing. They ain't
so,
got no business talking about all that.
Well, I mean, they're talking about it, but I think again they started off. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily in solidarity. I feel like it was more of platitudes. It wasn't. It was really the setup. It was a setup. So they said, "Listen, let's get that out the way."
If we could share the screen, if we could put that thing up on the board and show this this ridiculous foolishness. They don't sit over there and talk at all about all of the illegals that's taking money out of black Muslim communities, all of the resources for money. They ain't talking about none of that stuff. They're going to sit over there and jump to some foreign affairs.
Okay, but like I said, they mention it, and they say, listen, we're all hurt. And when they say we're all, they use some platitudes about the universal community, and everyone feels the pain and suffering of the Palestinian people. But it's like, then they go into, we know, it's almost like we understand that you're frustrated by this. But then they go into, the prophet said, do not get angry, because, when you're angry, you lose your sense of, mental stability. So basically,
mention Donald Trump to them and watch how angry, how fast they get angry.
Okay. Well, let's not get there. So they said, so like I said, it was a setup. So here's the part one. We know what you're upset about, but don't let that get you all bent out of shape and get and basically they say something about the future. You know, we are living in the present. We have to sort of like strategic. So they've set up the play to say the Arabs essentially are being emotional because of what's going on over in Palestine, and we have to be strategic about it. And then they reference the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where, you know, the Prophet ﷺ allowed his name to be or his title to be erased off of the document that he signed with the people of Mecca that would allow his people in Medina to make Hajj with the, you know, 10-year period. And he's basically, they're hearkening to that document in that moment to essentially suggest that, you know, you have to be cool-headed when having planning long-term strategic benefit. And so then they go and make the case, you know, Kamala, we gonna support Kamala because
let's read this. Let's read this here. Since this is gonna be, and we can have this be the topic of the day here, because I think that once this is addressed, it'll set the stage going forward for what the viewpoint is, or what the differences are. So it says here, we are all heartbroken and in deep pain over the war in Gaza and the escalation in Lebanon. We stand with the global-wide outcry to immediately stop the continued genocide against the Palestinian people. The collective consciousness, inherent soul, and sense of justice of all humanity is assaulted, disturbing the peace of all. We are all one in our frustration to the point of anger. Okay. We are taught by our beloved prophet to resist becoming angry, for it eats up goodness and overrides rational thinking. Our lives in these United States of America are not in a vacuum, and as such, the election choices, the decisions, Our lives in these elections are not in a Our lives in these United States of America are not in a vacuum, and as such, the election choices, the decisions that we make are not either.
Right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
They don't just affect us, but all American citizens for years, maybe decades to come. We are to be future-oriented, strategic, and rational rather than just focus on the present. Thus, it is imperative that we elect leaders who have committed to a ceasefire, an independent Palestine, stabilizing our democracy, and who stand with our community. I find that to be ridiculous.
Okay, go ahead. Why?
So when they set a framework for what they say is the criteria that looks out for their interests,
right?
The thing that they highlight is those who are committed to a ceasefire overseas,
right?
An independent Palestine, which is overseas. And then it says, in stabilizing our democracy and who stand with our community. Now keep in mind, they say stabilizing our democracy. So in assessing the candidates, they decide to go and vote for a vice president who did not receive one vote from the U.S. people. But yet they're talking about somebody who's going to stabilize democracy.
Well, that's
crazy.
Well, that you would say that Trump, that speaks directly to the narrative that Trump is a destabilizing force.
He got votes by the people. So if we're going to talk about democracy,
right?
They installed Kamala to replace Joe Biden,
right?
And get transferred his electoral votes, and because they know good and well there's not a single person who will watch this that votes for Kamala that will deny the fact that if RFK Jr. was allowed to run as a Democrat, and didn't get shut out by his own party, the way that they did Bernie Sanders against Hillary, and the way that they did Hillary against Barack,
right,
that he would have been second in line had Joe bowed out, and he would have been at that convention addressing his delegates just as well.
right.
So this was not a democratic process where we got to the point of saying that we're going to vote for Kamala Harris as the candidate.
So we know that's
incredibly hypocritical for them to say that.
But that's the hypocrisy. Really that's the hypocrisy of the whole Democratic Party. They talk threat to democracy, yet Nancy Pelosi had no problem articulating the idea. She said that she made the decision that Trump would not be in the White House. She made the decision. And so, in addition to blocking Bernie Sanders, like you said, in addition to blocking RFK Jr., in addition to appointing Kamala Harris, so the democracy that the Democrats are talking about is a different democracy. They're talking about the administrative state. They're talking about this system that has the Republicans and the Democrats go through this dance as if they're opposing forces, when in actuality they're both working on a project of establishing the uniparty. So there's a uniparty that's actually governing the country, along with that deep state that you mentioned. And so Trump is a threat to that thing, and that thing has been labeled democracy. And so what happens is that the leaders of your community and the leaders of their community, like you mentioned it, they, like the politicians, must have some vested interest in the maintenance of this uniparty.
They say what Morpheus said. He said these people will become so helplessly dependent on the system that they'll fight to defend it.
Right.
And honestly, that's what I'm seeing with these imams over here. Y'all telling on yourselves right now, because y'all behind the scenes been like how let's speak on this right quick.
Right.
And I always say this: these imams who signed this letter,
right,
y'all were the imams that Imam WD Muhammad denounced before his death.
Oh, wow.
Y'all are the imams that Imam WD Muhammad said is the reason why he's disbanding his organization and having everybody come to him. That whole concept of they're not trained theologians and all the rest of that stuff. Those imams fit into that category, in my humble opinion. And then when you go, as we continue on with this letter,
yeah, please do.
This is where it gets outrageous to me. It says, in assessing the candidates for president, for us, it's not the lesser of two evils. So they didn't even go there with the logic. I would have even maybe, hey, y'all were misinformed, and y'all just thought both of them were bad, and y'all just picked. No, y'all didn't even go there with it. Y'all actually are convinced in some stupid way that the other side is actually it. Which, once again, at every step of the way, they are proving that they are not worthy or competent enough to be leaders, because it's one of two things. You are either incompetent and unintelligent, or you are corrupt. And both of those mean you get washed aside. That's why I said ain't not a single one of them on that list is somebody, honestly, at this point, that I probably even address as Imam. What's up, brother? If that.
All right, so go ahead, continue.
So they say, in assessing the candidates for president, it's not the lesser of two evils for us as people of faith, specifically as Muslims. It's a measure or estimate, qadar, of the harm, shar or dari, and the benefit. When faced with a choice, we are expected to carefully assess the potential benefits and harm involved. prioritizing actions that bring better and minimizing negative consequences.
Right.
This thing is horribly written.
Right.
This was modeled in our beloved prophets signing the unjust treaty of Hudaybiyah with the enemy. This was also integral to the thinking of Imam WD Muhammad, the first Imam in America's history who, along with the great Muhammad Ali, promoted embracing our American and Muslim identity when he picked up the American flag and began engaging in interfaith relations. This was present-future oriented, as both of which weren't popular at the time. What's popular is not always right, and what's right is not always popular. In our estimation, the present-future benefits of voting for Vice President Harris far outweighs the harms of the other options. Let's consider the broad picture in addition to the one in our immediate vision.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, so that's crazy.
So the present future, is that a phrase that you're familiar with? Is that something that your community
that sounds like the same type of word salad gobbledygook that Kamala be talking about when she be talking about the passage of time. With the passage of time, and then they think that they are actually. First off, I think this is poorly written.
So you're saying that that's not, because I know Imam WD has like certain copy phrase. Yeah, nah, that's what. Yeah, okay. All right. Cool. Salad. All right. That's what. All right. Okay. All right. So the present future. All right. So again, you see, like I said, they reference the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Now, that's an interesting position, and so when you talked about untrained theologians, that might be a case where the imams in this case have taken that treaty, and I've heard that treaty discussed by the likes of Dr. Sherman Jackson, and the significance of it. You'll get to that point later on in this letter, but they say something about America, because of Kamala Harris, she had the first Eid celebration in the White House. And so they said it's more than symbolism. It's a sign that that Islam is an American religion. And Dr. Sherman Jackson had characterized the importance of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah as in that Islam, through that treaty, had been accepted as one of the Arab religions, because that treaty allowed the Muslims to make Hajj, because the pagan Arabs were already making Hajj, and so that treaty allowed the Muslims to eventually return to Mecca, and the rest is history.
How did they return to Mecca, though?
Now, that's an interesting point.
We are not in a position.
Right.
We are not in a position.
Right.
To return back to Mecca.
Right.
With a show of force.
Right.
The way that these folks were. So where are they getting that logic from?
Right.
We're now underneath, because of this administration, lesser of two evils. We are now underneath the immigrant. So we are now knocked down another level than we even were before, and they're expecting that we're supposed to come back mighty on horses. Circumambulating the Kaaba, knocking out the idols. Is that what they're expecting?
See, you're going a little too far now, brother, because what they are making a calculation, like when they say present future, they're making a calculation that by when the Arabs who had been committed to the Democratic Party, almost like the African Americans, like with a 90, 80 upper 80s, 90% voting for the Democratic Party, when they split hairs and decided that the foreign policy would take precedence. I shared this with you. I felt like the Imam WD community gets activated at certain points because they it's kind of like, there's certain points in the American body politics, like you mentioned, the COVID, when the Muslims may have had some hesitation about taking that shot. The Imam WD community came forward to say to the African American Muslims, because the Arab Muslims had their own, the foreign Muslims had their own doctors instead of experts, right? But the African American Muslims who might, and like black people who might have had that vaccine hesitation because of Tuskegee and all of the other reasons to have apprehension about it. It was the Imam WD community's doctors and medical professionals that came forward to alhamdulillah, to okay, like say, hey, this is safe and effective, Right. And so this is another opportunity. So there's moments in history where
wouldn't that lead you to believe though that they agents? Remember I told you that when Imam WD used to have his Ramadan retreats, he used to say no government officials, and most of the time that meant that most of those imams would not be invited up in there.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like when I look at this whole thing right here, and just like how you said those folks got activated, those are the marks of agents. I call it out like how I see it in that respect. Because when you finish this particular thing here, because here's what we're gonna get to, and this is where the ultimate checkmate is on this whole thing. They're gonna start with this Treaty of Hudaybiyah and all the rest of this stuff, right? At what point did vaccines get proven safe and effective?
Never.
At what point did they not spike myocarditis? So that's what I'm saying. We now have the benefit of hindsight and 2020 vision. How did the last 4 years go when they pushed Joe Biden? Everybody now is in a worse off situation. So now these quote unquote leaders are supposed to be the shepherds of the sheep, and they leading them straight to the wolves. And what I propose at this particular point is, like I said, they are either leading the sheep to the wolves because they are dumb and incompetent, or the worse, which is y'all have been sold out and compromised. Because unfortunately, kind of going around circle back to what you were saying about Imam WD's community's mission, the goal was to always go and get qualified and come back. But as you and I have talked about, these people go away to college, they come back, but then now you're in a fraternity or sorority, or now you in a order, right? Now you went to go become a doctor, but now you're in the hospital. You don't even think about coming back to open up a medical office right next to the mosque, so that way that the Muslim sisters could see a Muslim doctor or something like that, a Muslim female doctor. So everybody went over, the ones that did it went to go get qualified, and they got comfortable over there, and they got compromised over there. Or essentially they became, let's put it in the best concept, they got dependent over there. To say, hey, listen, I'm not giving up this good job, or you know what, I already got my house over here living next to my white neighbors, or whatever the situation may be. But bottom line is they didn't stick to the script.
But that goes back to the point that I was making about, for me, and like I said, I had to correct myself because there's no question about the significance of correcting the Aqidah, and I don't want to minimize that. But a close, 1B, once you change the idea of the nation as an independent nation within the nation, then when you work in a hospital, if you go and it's the same condition of African Americans. When you become middle class African American, you become you get your PhD, you become established in these institutions, and you're validated, and you're rewarded handsomely economically, like, and become part of the middle class, upper middle class. You know, it takes the steam out of you, because you're not being quote unquote oppressed. You're not being quote unquote you're not suffering from racism or these other isms. And even if your Islamic presence, if the fact that you're a Muslim is been pacified, people are not ostracizing you because you're a Muslim, because you're a great doctor and you're a great lawyer and you're a great asset to the team and to the industry, to the business, then it would be almost ungrateful to think that you need to go and establish your own, because then it becomes like, what are you saying? I'm at Harvard, or I'm at Princeton, or I'm at Columbia, and I need to have my own university. I need to have my own laboratories. Like, isn't this what it's all about? And so so that's how the deep state becomes the permanent state, because I guess they figured that in order to get the people to buy in, you had to first let them in, and once you let them in, you keep them in by giving them access to, and making life easy, making life not necessarily easy, but making
better than folks that ain't,
right,
that didn't go through.
Right. And so now to turn around and ask these people, so if you had a nation mindset and you said, listen, those other groups that you mentioned, the Amish or the Jewish people, that's why they even need their own country. We need our own country. We need our own area in Brooklyn. We need Chinatown. Black people don't.
And as you and I spoke about before, that was where the New Africas and the
these
CPCs
concepts
that those
right.
imams blocked and all the rest of that stuff. That was where all of that came from.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or that, I should say, that was the intent of those specific things. But that's where, once again, it's like, we're gonna get, as the podcast grows, we're gonna get all of our technical stuff up. But right now would be a perfect time to put up one of those Malcolm clips where he sits over there and talks about how the liberals do what they do, because all of these imams right here would be sitting over there riding coattails about, well, Brother Malcolm would have did it, and Brother Malcolm, but at the same time, they are literally going against Malcolm's words,
right,
with these endorsements of these liberals.
So,
and then when they sit over there and start talking about just to even bring Islam into the mix in the first place, so it's like, so first off, we talking about a group of men nominating a woman as a leader.
Right.
Like, we could even start on that elementary level of it. Like, there's just so many aspects of this that I'm just in total disagreement with.
Right.
And more importantly, it's this concept of, you guys are parading around like you speak for people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and so here's the thing with that. When you parade around like you speak for people, now all of a sudden you start gaining audiences of people who want to, of selected people in power who want to reach that body of people.
Right.
Right? So if one of two things winds up happening, either you wind up becoming an agent for them, or you wind up just hustling them because you really ain't passing no messages on them.
Right.
Because they don't believe you. You're basically like Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton don't move no needles with black folk.
Right.
Now, to those who pay him his checks, he might still convince them that he got a little sway.
Now, here's the thing. It's not necessarily about convincing, because believe you me, those people double check on you. But as long as you are willing, it's the same thing that happens in third world countries. They will give money to King so-and-so, and he's going to take that money and put it in the Swiss bank and send his kids to Europe. And so Africa and these different countries, Nigeria and Zimbabwe, they have resources and they have rich beyond belief. But the establishment, the colonizers, know that they can go and talk to some king that is disingenuous and doesn't have his people's best interest at heart. They can find him, make sure his kids have access to all the finest things. And you go on Instagram and you'll see some Nigerian child talking about how watch them spend their 200,000 a month allowances, and meanwhile, their parents are the head of some third world country that doesn't have running water and electricity. Not talking about Nigeria in this particular
in the
case.
villages, in
Right.
the outer villages,
And so these same type of situations are being recreated within our communities. So that goes for the African American community, where these people like Obama's and Kamala get to parade around and say, yeah, we black and we represent black, and then the black people are just happy to see that their people are in these places. So we're supposed to be happy to see these imams at the White House, or see these imams rubbing shoulders with Obama, or seeing these imams at the DNC. This representation, and then that's it. There's no policy. There's no
there's no fund. There's no budget allocations.
Right.
There's none of those type of things.
Right.
And okay, we're going.
So they make a list. So they make a list of 5 things. I believe it's 5 things that why we should support Kamala.
Right. So here it is. It says let's consider the broad picture in addition to the one in our immediate vision. The passage of time. First, in fact, what is happening is not on her, for she is not president of these United States. But yet, at the same time, they'll sit over there and talk about how she brought the Muslims to the White House, though, right?
I mean, I thought that was interesting because they say, she says that she was in the room. She said I was the last person in the room.
Last person.
She's saying she's the border czar. She's saying that she's qualified to be the president because she's been the vice president. So now you want to say, hey, she's not the president, so therefore what's happening is not her. She doesn't have any impact on what's happening.
And then it says, prior to serving in her current position, Vice President Harris has been regularly engaging with the Muslim community throughout her long and distinguished career. And I guess I could put in parentheses, when she supported all of those white cops, rest in peace, Oscar Grant. So then it says, when Donald Trump passed the Muslim ban, which we all know was disinformation. See, now we just know that these guys are just dumb. Because, like, did Donald Trump ban Malaysia? Did he ban Indonesia? Did he ban Egypt? Did he ban Saudi Arabia?
What was the name of this ban? Because to call it a Muslim ban,
it wasn't even named a Muslim ban. That was a ban that was a name that the Shmedia gave it. So the very fact that they even call it a Muslim ban shows that they programmed by the Shmedia.
Right.
So then it says, then it was then Senator Harris who filed a bill in the Senate asking to provide access to legal counsel for our brothers and sisters caught in the Muslim ban. So basically, you was advocating for the terrorist countries.
So when I read this letter, in the first sentence, in that first paragraph, when they're talking about the Palestinians and how the universal is crying and weeping, I had noticed that they didn't reference to them as brothers and sisters in Islam. That's how you typically hear about these people being referenced. And I thought it was interesting that this was the first time they used our brothers and sisters when they're talking about in opposition to a Trump ban. So pulling on the heartstrings. So this letter is crafted in with such political tact that is not sincere. It's like, who wrote this letter?
That's what I'm getting at. These imams are actually lying to the Muslim people.
Right.
And then it says, Vice President Harris held the first Eid al-Adha celebration in American history at her home, welcoming Muslim leaders from across America into her living room. This is beyond symbolism. It is an affirmation that Islam is an American religion. I only have one question to ask for that. When she had the dinner at her house, was M. Hoff beaten on his health
On his
or not?
no,
But like
no.
did the Muslims there
Here we
see
go.
M. Hoff
No. Let's
violate
not.
on Kamala
See.
and
Let's
everybody else,
let.
and did they just turn around because it was going on?
Let's. I don't think that. First of all, I don't think it was at her house. I think it was at the White House. When I looked it up, it was at the White House. They had an Eid celebration at the White House. Now.
So then they lying.
Yeah. It was at the White House. And
no, this is her. They said they went.
I think they. I was waiting for them to say she was cooking them.
To her living room and
I think that's. I think that's when she had the collard greens in the bathtub. That's what I.
And naan.
Yeah.
With naan.
Yeah, naan
collard
bread.
Greens and naan.
Right.
That's what she had.
Right. So she was in there.
So then it says. This is beyond symbolism. It's the affirmation that Islam is.
But you see, they know that it was symbolism. Because why'd you have to say that? This goes beyond symbolism. So they know that the automatic pushback is, bro, let's give it a break. Then you say that Islam is an American religion.
I disagree
Is Islam an American religion?
Islam is a universal religion that has a place or an application here in America.
Right.
But America is not whenever you put something first, you're stating that that's the origin.
Right.
Islam was not created in America.
Right.
Right. And it's not unique to America.
And America is a secular country, meaning that there's a separation between church and state. So the idea that Islam is an American religion. Islam is a religion among many religions
that's protected
by the Constitution, but America itself doesn't have a religion. America itself is a secular religion. Kamala Harris is not a Muslim, so her Eid celebration was definitely symbolic. Right? And so that's where they are playing with that Treaty of Hudaybiyah myth. And they're framing it as if it's the same as when the Muslims were patient, knowing at some point that the fulfillment was that in the future, when they talk about present and future, the long-term play was to establish Islam in Arabia. And so, like you said, when the Muslims came back and knocked those idols out, that's what Islam was about.
But see that's where, and then we'll finish this out, so we will close out the episode here. One of the things that I'm highlighting here though is when the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went into that treaty, he was already in the position of strength. That's why Umar and all the rest of them were so mad. They felt they could have took him right then and there.
Right.
Muslims are not, as the African American Muslim is not in that position.
Right.
So they're not negotiating from a position of strength.
Right.
As we would say.
And that's not your objective. You know what I'm saying? That's not your objective.
So now here it, and this is the reason why I want to finish, because this really goes deep further into, and then we're going to slice this up and be done with them, because like I said, this was disgusting to me. It says, when the war in Gaza began, she traveled and met with regional leaders and made clear that the U.S. would pursue a two-state solution and what reconstruction in Gaza would look like. She also made clear that the international humanitarian law must be respected. She stood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, on hallowed ground for the civil rights warriors who fought for the Voting Rights Act. She was the first in the administration to demand a ceasefire and who spoke about the devastating loss of life in Gaza and the unfolding humanitarian crisis. Just 2 months ago, when she met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, she held a press conference afterwards and was clear as to her dismay with him and she said that she would not be silent about the suffering in Gaza. She has spoken with the Palestinian Authority returning to Gaza. She has spoken with Palestinian Americans who have lost family in Gaza. She has met with doctors returning from medical missions in Gaza, and she has committed ceasefire. She is a committed ceasefire candidate too, and is the best option for ending bloodshed in Gaza and Lebanon. Now, mind you, totally leaving out the historical context that there was none of this crap going on under the 4 years of Trump. There was no conflict to even have a ceasefire conversation about. Totally leave out anything that had to do with the Abraham Accords, in spite of how the fact that, if we're going to be honest, there are some people that would have some issues or would have a rebuttal about the Abraham Accord. You could at the very least mention it in regards to saying that not only did this highlight an intention, but also a tangible action item that had occurred instead of a whole bunch of quote-unquote symbolic gestures. Actually things that passed, you know, whether you agree with it or not. The man went and set up an embassy in Palestine, in Jerusalem. Regardless of whether you want to admit it, agree with it or not, the man went and took out all of ISIS. Regardless of whether you want to admit it or not, we didn't hear about any of those Ramadan bombings of mosques and things like that, these little inner Shiite, Sunni type of conflicts that we used to hear since basically 9/11 started. So for them to then go, first off, as you notice, this whole thing was Gaza this and Gaza that. Now you left one little line in there, right? One quick line. She stood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on hollow ground for the civil rights warriors who fought for the voting rights. But the chick didn't help pass one law or act in 4 years for black folk. And you want us to be satisfied
with symbolism.
The fact that even with the symbolism.
More symbolism.
Because she successfully got her lynching bill passed, the one that did not go well with Jussie Smollett, that she then had to go on the blood of George Floyd about. She got that passed. She got her Asian crime bill passed. She was the deciding vote on the I call it the Inflation Act, not the Inflation Reduction, the Inflation Act. She was all present on all of those, but yet, oh no, she was just vice president. She ain't have nothing to do with policy, this and that. But yet at the same time, she was influential enough to do the symbolic gesture to let America know that Islam is here to stay. What is all this double talk? And then furthermore, you out of all of this whole thing, what you talking about, how she's looking out for our interest, you give one little line for black folk. You supposed to be black yourself. But the whole thing, you talking about the Middle East. Okay, then it says, here we close it out now. Our community is in pain, but we must also remember that we cannot afford or we cannot allow our country to return to Jim Crow America. This is a reality our community cannot.
Here we go.
This is not a reality our community can afford. Knowingly enabling someone like Donald Trump to return to office, whether by voting directly for him or for a third-party candidate, so they don't even want you to vote independent.
Right.
Is both a moral and strategic failure. So now you are going to try to use your illegitimate position as an illegitimate Muslim leader in the black community to try to shame people into voting for Kamala and making it a moral issue. Meanwhile, how many thousands of kids is missing? How many news reports do you got to see of runaway immigrants who finally got away from their quote-unquote guardians or custodians that said from the day they got brought here to America, they've been trafficked every day of their life here? All of these different things, the fentanyl overdoses, all of these rapes that are happening on the hands or by the hands of these immigrants, and she's gonna sit over, and they're gonna sit over there and try to act like it's a moral issue that you vote for Kamala, because it's a moral issue that we have trans teaching our kids in reading hour in elementary school. It's a moral issue to have a man dressed like a woman follow your daughter inside of a girl's bathroom.
It's a moral issue. To her biggest platform is abortions.
Holy smokes! So now let's even get to that. They totally gloss over the fact. Keep in mind, this is see, that's why now we start getting into, like I said, you can start noticing what a person's intent is based on their actions. A lot of the time, because there's certain forks in the road that you cross where it's like, nah, I'm sorry, bro. You had opportunities to say my bad, my mistake, or yo, this was an accident. But when it becomes a repeatable cycle or process, I have no other choice but to say that this was intentional. So all of these particular things here, when we talking about Kamala and all of those things, it's like they are very clearly running a immoral, anti-Islamic campaign. There is no doubt about it. I don't care what the misinformation. Go Google it. There are at least 11 states in the United States that have okayed post-term abortions, meaning that the child could have already been born. And even though there are some people on the Dem side that will say, oh no, the post-term abortions are only for babies that are born with these tremendous deformities and all the rest of these other things, it does not specifically or limit the post-term abortion to those scenarios. So you got all of these highly immoral topics that are on the plate when it comes to them and what they promote. And they're going to sit over here and act like it's a moral issue here because of what? An unfounded Jim Crow era. Notice how when they mention the Jim Crow era and try to associate it with Donald Trump, they don't give a single example of what that would be, because they don't have an example of that in the 4 years that he was in there. So then it says, particularly in swing states, a vote for a third party could enable Trump to win that state and therefore the elections. In 2016, Trump won Michigan by merely 11,000 votes, mainly because of votes cast for third-party candidates. This enabled Trump to inflict great harm on our communities and country in numerous ways. They don't explain how, though. Trump is funded by pro-settlement donors who support Israeli annexation of the West Bank. He has promised to give Netanyahu what he needs to finish the job in Gaza, and even promised to deport pro-Palestinian students and activists who he refers to as jihadists. Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, has promised to turn Gaza into lucrative beachfront property. Now, once again, where in this entire paragraph that I just finished do you hear anything about African American interests? These Palestinians don't consider these imams to be their leaders. Remember what my man Nas said? F black leaders. Because whites don't have none leading them. So at this particular point, it's like, so who are y'all really leading? Because the Palestinians don't follow y'all. They probably don't even know that y'all fighting for them.
Now, this is interesting because, like I said, I was kind of asked, or it was suggested that I kind of not touch this letter because on one level it appears to be an internal letter for the Imam WD community, but at the same time, and I told the individual, I said, really, I feel like this letter is more a letter to the government. I feel like this is more of a letter to the establishment to let the individuals on the people in power to let these guys know that we're the good Muslims. These Arabs, they may have betrayed the administrative state. They're willing to undermine the continued success of the administrative state, even at the threat of Donald Trump. And I think that this letter is a letter to the administrative state saying this is what we told our people.
Right, I agree. And then here goes the last paragraph of it. Given his well-documented history of harming our communities and country, which they give no record of, as well as what he has promised he will do to Muslims and Palestinians should he return. Here we go again.
What was that?
Incumbent upon.
What did he promise? What did he promise he was going to do to Muslims and Palestinians?
That exactly is the point. They don't reference it. Anyway, probably whatever MSNBC told me.
Like that lady said, they're gonna send them back to Africa.
Yeah, exactly. And Trump is going to be a Nazi, fascist, communist at the
Right.
same time.
Right.
At the same time, he's going to be all three of these in one.
Right.
Okay. Given his well-documented history of harming our communities and country, as well as what he has promised he will do to Muslims and Palestinians should he return, it is incumbent upon us not to allow our high emotions to dictate our actions to our detriment.
Right.
We cannot turn our backs on our diverse Muslim community at home and those abroad who are impacted by U.S. policies in our moment of pain and anger. We have a responsibility and a honor not to place our community in harm's way. But yet you went and recommended that bioweapon to them, you bastards. Then it says, we have responsibility not to place our community in harm's way, which you failed at. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz have been clear. They see a new way forward and are not going back. We stand with forward and we call on other imams in our communities to move forward with us in service and sincerity. And then this list of imams who I won't even name because y'all know who y'all are. Y'all ain't my imams. I don't consider y'all to be leaders. I consider y'all to be a failure of leadership who have lost all votes of confidence and trust in your ability.
So let me ask you a question. You read this letter, assuming that this letter was, distributed among the members of the community, may have even been part of the Juma khutbahs at these various masjids. What do you imagine the community's response would be? Like if there was a poll, what would you think as far as the effectiveness? Like how many people of the community, what percentage of the community do you think would be like, sir, yes, sir?
Well, I'll say this. Since Imam WD passed away, right? There was obviously a power vacuum that many of the imams that he denounced. Let me keep going back to that. That many of the imams that he denounced tried to circle back around and still try to act like they, even though he pushed me away, I'm forever dedicated to this man. Even though he might have said something about me, it's okay, I'm with him. They, I believe, have spurred a generation even of weak-minded people. I'm almost to say, in certain ways, I would almost say that I'm embarrassed to call these people co-members of a community that I associated with when he was alive. Because I think you and I have spoken about this before. As many issues as I've had with the NOI, the NOI chose not to get vaccinated. You know what I'm saying? Farrakhan recognizes like, yo, feds ain't never been our friends. Prosecutors ain't never been our friends. So if Trump is going up against them folk, I'm with him with that. That's somebody who logical with it. But it's funny how they say Trump derangement syndrome is a real diagnosis. It is a mental illness. And I wholeheartedly propose, based on this letter, that every imam listed in here suffers from TDS, which by default makes them emotional, which by default means that they turn a blind eye to the fact that they're acting like they're pushing for a moral issue, when in actuality, they're supporting abortion. They're supporting abortion and trans rights. You gotta be kidding me. Where in Islam, where in the Quran can they find any kind of validation for what it is that they say they back
and you say abortion, trans rights, and that's domestic policy. And on a foreign policy, they're supporting the continued genocide of the Palestinian people.
Absolutely.
So
Palestinians wasn't dying under Trump.
So answer my question. You just did a Kamala Harris. I asked you a question. You didn't answer.
My bad. No, but none of that. But that's what I'm saying. I believe that I'm so ashamed of them that I honestly believe that they are following the same logic that they was following with the coronavirus and everything else. They right on board. That's why I said I'm actually in certain ways ashamed that I have this tether with this community. I grew up. I'm a Claire Muhammad school baby. But at the same time, who these people have become, the men are not strong anymore. And then on top of that, they're putting things out there in a way where they really are assimilating. Like there's no more, I don't feel like there's a real community of Imam WD Muhammad anymore. You don't hear people talking about New Africa anymore or anything like that. It's just kind of like everybody is just kind of getting assimilated into these other communities. You know, the Arabs are taking over the WD communities, or, you know, unfortunately the imams are just deciding they're going to sell off the mosque properties for their own personal benefit. So the communities are weak, and therefore the majority of them will more than likely go the way that these imams are, because they've tried to assimilate too into the world. And that's why I said, I mean, kudos for all of the theological differences I have with the nation. Kudos to them for at the very least being smart enough and aware enough to know I'm voting for Trump, and to heck with these vaccines. And this virus wasn't what it was, what they programmed, or what they wanted to program me to make it believe. The fact that my community set, you know, for all of their college degrees and all the rest of this stuff, allowed themselves to fall susceptible to such foolishness. And then for now, too, see, it'd be one thing if back in 2020 they didn't know no better, right? And say, yo, we gonna vote for Biden. But now y'all done had 4 years of illegals running up and taking over your neighborhoods. They probably, and some of these imams right now probably got their mosques surrounded by illegals right now. Realness. And they gonna sit over here and just turn the blind eye because they are aware of the fact that, like, wait a minute, just like the ones that wanted to stand next to Giuliani after 9/11 and all the rest of that stuff. It's just like, yo, you know what? Yo, I'm gonna get mine. I got this leadership position. These people don't really follow me anyway. So I'm just gonna leverage this and play it over here with this political party over here. Maybe I get a check or two. And when I need to, I'll put out these letters. This letter was like an Obama nigga, get shut up and get in line type of situation. So that's why it's like there will be hopefully a certain group of them that might respond the same way that a lot of black men responded to Obama, like, yo, who is you to try to tell me what to do? I'm a grown man, I think for myself type vibe. But then, yeah, unfortunately, I believe that my community, because of these leaders, especially now that it's been 15, 20 years almost since man passed away in 2008, right? So we almost there, right? Over 25 years since he passed away. No, 15 years, excuse me. So now you put yourself in a situation where, yeah, you've had enough time. You had 2 7-year cycles for people to kind of get used to these non-productive, lame duck imams. Get used to, it becomes a normal thing now. You get used to seeing your imams lose property. It's not right. You know what I'm saying? But then at the same time, you're seeing them stand next to all these political leaders. And you're seeing them running for office even. And it's like, we know what y'all did. Bottom line is this letter, I say that, I speak for myself. I don't speak for nobody. I see what y'all doing. I ain't with it. I ain't jacking it. Y'all not my leaders. I don't support it at all. Trump 2024. And everybody who I know is going to be getting this message as well. Hopefully, I'm going to take a whole crew of folk with me, because I ain't nobody in my circle that I know of. I mean, I know people that ain't voting for Trump, but I don't know nobody that's voting for Harris. Not in my immediate circle. Certainly not in the African-American Muslim concept. So that's why I'm like, I don't even think they speak for African-American Muslims as a whole. But in regards to the community that used to be Imam WD Muhammad, I believe that the community has become so weak that if there aren't other voices like ours that are steering them in another direction, they become so programmed to be sheeples to these guys that if they not gonna say nothing about them losing mosque properties and stuff like that, they probably won't say nothing to them about recognizing that they got compromised. Even if they don't even support this and go to the polls and vote for Trump, you ain't gonna hear none of them come out and say nothing against these guys. That's why it's like, listen, if I look to the left and I look to the right and I see some foolishness going on, and ain't nobody gonna have the guts or whatever to stand up and say something to these dudes. Like, I'm sorry, I understand a lot of these, some of these is old power structure. That's why you can't start this thing off talking about deep state. Some of these dudes was imams when I was first born, came into the mosque. These dudes was already there. But guess what? Say, oh prophet, you are men. I'm a man just like you. These dudes ain't all exalted or nothing like that. They men. And that means that a lot of them, and since ain't none of them the prophet, it certainly would be more than logical to say they ain't none of them perfect. Now, I'm more than willing to accept people's mistakes. What I'm not willing to accept are intentional deceptions and misguidance, which is what, in my opinion, this letter was. So shame on all of these imams, so-called imams, who decided to go ahead and draft this letter. It, like I said, not only demonstrates, in my opinion, a total lack of competence as a leader, but also in a lot of ways makes me seriously question the spiritual nature and characteristics of all of them, recognizing that things such as abortion and all the rest of these things are so clearly laid out. The fact that there were no Muslims dying in the Middle East during Trump's presidency was so clearly laid out, that for them to ignore those things and focus on a pie in the sky that has already proven themselves to be a liar is insanity to me. It's like I say, how much money they pay y'all? I'm in it on that though. How much money did they pay y'all to write that letter, or how much money are you hoping to get earmarked as a result of you writing that letter? That's the question that I would ask every single one of them, because everything got an intent behind it. And don't tell me that y'all just randomly came together and said, hey, everybody, I got an idea. We should come together and we should write a letter to support Kamala Harris. No benefit to us whatsoever.
Right.
You could never convince me that was the case.
All right.
So that's how I'll end that, my guy.
Inshallah. So, listen, my man. Thank you. I'm glad you. I'm glad we had this opportunity, because again, I was instructed not to touch it because I'm not official card carrying member. So I'm glad I was able to get hold of you for this important conversation. So I don't feel like I'm walking around in somebody else's house. We're gonna wrap it up because this is, we've gone a bit over the time, but inshallah, let's make sure that we, touch back up soon. I mean, definitely before this election is over, we should like get back up and make sure we reporting on all these important developments. Like I said, we're gonna go to bed tonight, but right before we got on, Middle East was on fire, and we don't know what these people are gonna do in order to, like Nancy Pelosi said, she made a decision that he's not going back into the White House. So now that the polls look like the people are gonna elect him, God only knows what these people are gonna do to try to disrupt this situation.
And on that note, I'll end on this note in regards to the people, because very clearly, those leaders out there, I don't ever claim to be an imam. I'm an imam of myself, imam of my own household. I never claim or even have desires to go out there and lead people, but I definitely, at the very least, will give y'all this little bit of guidance, this information that I am embodying or incorporating into my own life. You make sure you got a whole bunch of food. You make sure you got 3 months if you live by yourself. You make sure you got 6 months worth of food if you have a family and anticipate the need to have to support other folks. You make sure that you have some silver and some gold, some precious metals. And you make sure that you even have the liquid colloidal versions of it for the health purposes of it. You make sure that you have some ammo and some hammers in states where it's legal. Because as Idris just said, for sure, one thing that we can all agree on is that there is going to be a very contentious election coming up. There are going to be a lot of variables being thrown out there. Be a World War III over here, a stock market crash over here, civil unrest for any number of reasons. And you want to make sure that in the event where things go crazy outside, that you have enough inside to keep your doors closed. Because any event, as we saw with all of these natural disasters and all the rest of those things, the last thing that you want to have happen is that you don't have the resources or supplies yourself. So now you're forced to go rely on government, FEMA, whoever, to go get your food and sit. Don't do that. Make sure that you have all of your rations and supplies in order, because all of this happy-go-lucky, past, present, the passage of time, all the rest of this stuff, this foolishness that they talking about ain't gonna mean nothing when, as y'all saw with these port strikes, how fast bottled water left them shelves over at Walmart. So I ended on that note, but get prepared. It's not just about this election. The real foolishness is going to start after the election. They're already saying that votes ain't going to be counted fully for 5 to 7 days. What you think is going to be happening in the meantime? Any and everything possible. So prepare for it.
So
prepare
continue.
Because when war comes, it's too late.
And continue to tune into Bean Pod Chronicles so we can keep you abreast on what's going on. And until next time, my brother, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, my guy.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor. I see you over there in the corner.
Yes, sir.
All right, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, there we go. Numbers in the cut.
Yeah. So we definitely could talk about it. We got triple OG in the building. It's official.
You ain't get muted or nothing out here, right?
You got your.
I stand on my own. Yeah, everybody, they all know it out there. I stand on my own. Y'all come see me, talk to me if y'all got any issues about what I said.
All right.
I stand on everything I said.
All right, inshallah. Wa alaikum salam.
Just be. Every song ain't the same. Cause you think it's right still. Wrong need to change. Yeah. A light point our horizons. Grew in this box, trap divided. Commercials display the products, branded with a spell landed. And foods that cause cancer. We chase lap dances, looking at strippers for the answers. Our own goods damage, genocide our own people. And tell you that's how the hood bandage. To crab in a barrel for new status. Newscasters before the newscaster. Choose savage before you choose family. You say you eating yet your mind's famished. After your trials, bored at it. And to think most your life trained by them. Broad actions, we swarm the flashing, prone through lacking. No morals for you to don't do that in. Now all that's in. Where's the men who stand upright from the bottom to take them up heights? We don't impress by image. Had a lot of antiques in my attic collecting gimmicks. All these attachments left true self absent. You already have friends. Add sense. This app, that trap, this snap. That split, this divide. Now you see the feces of the mind in digital time. Go wipe your behind, go wipe your befront. Claim your mind, you showing signs you don't know what you have become. Puppet mastered, ventriloquist beings numb. Can't feel, just react. Adjust to this, click like to that. Mannequins trapped in the front. What type of life is that? Mind beings looking at the dead for live meanings. Confused by opinions, trapped in the cobwebs of the system. Every song it's the same. Could you think it's right still? Wrong need to change. Could you think it's right still? Every song it's the same. Could you think it's right still? Wrong need to change. Wrong need to change.